Gwen kept away the dishes and wiped her hands. Yes, honey, she said, coming forward. Then he saying to take out the green file from his luggage. Gwen clutched the hem of her shirt. In the mention of Theon's name, she found herself revisiting the depths of her sorrows, the runners of her wounds freshly reopened. I don't have the keys to his travel bag. Valentina frowned. Is that so? Gwen nodded with a gloomy face. I'll go and ask him, and yeah, a few relatives will arrive to offer their condolences to prepare dinner. She walked out while Gwen let out a long breath. What kind of husband is he? He arrived yesterday but didn't even meet me. Why did I even marry him? She thought with a heavy heart and dragged her feet to her room. She freshened up and came out when the door knocked. Gwen opened the door but froze, seeing Theon, who was tapping his feet on the floor and staring in the opposite direction. He looked at her, hearing the door creaked open. Gwen was the first one to react. Hello, come in, she said, moving out of the way. Theon stood still, staring at her without even blinking. She had changed a lot in these 3 years. Her face was as pale as ever. She had lost a lot of weight and had dark circles under her eyes. Come in, she said once more. He hummed in response, still staring at her. I said, come in. If you don't want to come in, then speak. Don't waste my time. She spoke sternly, blocking his way. He stopped, inhaling a deep breath, and entered the room. Gwen staggered backward, but Theon held her by the waist, closing the door behind. His gaze held tenderness. Never in her life has Gwen seen someone as handsome as him. But what's the use of his handsomeness when he turned his back on his wife? Gwen's mood turned sore, and she released herself from his grip. Theon composed himself, inwardly cursing himself for letting his guard down. I'll freshen up, he said, taking out the keys from his pocket. There's a green file in my suit, take it out. He handed her the keys and walked into the washroom. Gwen clutched the key in her fist. As if I am his servant, she muttered furiously, glaring at the washroom door. At night, the whole day Gwen didn't see Theon. He took his file and walked out without a word. Now everyone called it a day when Gwen came to the kitchen. Its condition was upside down, all the dishes scattered everywhere while food and drinks spilled in each corner. She bit her lips, looking around the kitchen when Valentina entered to fetch a water bottle. Oh my God, what is this? Uni, can you please help me clean this? I am really exhausted today. Valentina made a disgusting face. I have to put Andreas to sleep. She thought for a while. I can just clean the counter. Gwen couldn't help but think, why do you even bother to do that? She shook her head and began cleaning the mess. After 30 minutes, she was done cleaning the kitchen and Valentina had already gone to sleep. Gwen also went back to her bedroom and freshened up while Theon was nowhere. It was midnight. Gwen was sleeping soundly when she felt a soft touch on her face. She opened her eyes to the darkness, making her frown. However, she remembered she had left the light switched on. After blinking a few times, Theon's face came into her vision, causing her frown to deepen as he was smiling. For a moment, her heart sank, thinking it might be Jack's ghost. One of their relatives who had come today said when the family member died, their spirit roams around the house for 30 days. How are you? Gwen's face turned white and she swiftly said. He noticed the fear in her eyes. Hey, it's me, Theon, he said and turned on the lights. Gwen released her breath. Did you think it was Jack? He is gone. He'll never return. He sat beside her and spoke. His tone grew somber when mentioning his late younger brother. What are you doing here? Theon looked at her with raised brows. What do you mean? The night is to sleep. Where do you expect me to sleep? Then I'll take the couch. She stood, heading to the couch. Don't turn off the lights. I can't sleep with. She gasped as Theon held her hand and pulled her towards him. Why wouldn't you share the bed with me? It's not the first time that you'll sleep with me. Gwen placed her hands on his shoulders to pull away, but he pulled her even closer. That time circumstances were different. We were newly married. I thought of you differently. She spoke furiously, then stared at her silently. You should have slept in the guest room as you did yesterday. She moved out of his grip. I arrived late. Nancy said you weren't feeling well, so I didn't want to disturb your sleep. He didn't know why he was explaining it to her. Wayne smiled bitterly. Nancy. She had an urge to grab his collar, ask him why he turned his back on her. However, she refrained herself and laid on the other side of the bed, facing her back to him. Next morning, Wayne woke up and prepared breakfast for everyone while Thang also woke up. He was confused why there was no maid in the house. He silently observed everything. The wine was setting the cupboard, thinking Thang would leave in a week, when she heard Nancy's sharp voice. Wine, where is this girl? Thang looked up from his laptop with a frown. Wine made her way out of the room where Nancy was standing. What happened, Uni? She asked calmly. Why is the guest room not cleaned yet? This is not your father's house where you can stay like a princess. Wine clenched her jaw. She held back to answer her as she knew the door to her room was open and Thang would be hearing everything. She wanted him to see their true colors. Listen to me carefully. You have no kids or husband to take care of, so you must work double in this house. After all, everything your husband earns is ours. Wine lowered her head silently. Go get to the work. They both flinched hearing Thang's growl. Then who am I if she doesn't have to take care of her husband? Just because I have been abroad, you have taken her for granted. He took menacing steps towards Nancy, making her tremble. Wine turned back where he was standing, glaring at Nancy, whose face went white and eyes wide. Wine opened her mouth to speak, but he cut her off. Wine, go to the room. He muttered through a clenched jaw. He interrupted her once again. Are you going willingly, or do I need to take you by myself? His menacing expression made her shiver. What are you waiting for? He held her by the wrist and dragged her to their shared bedroom. What was that? Why didn't you speak for yourself? He flung her on the bed and said furiously. Valentina entered the room. What happened, Thang? Why were you yelling just now? Thang turned towards her sharply. Is she a maid? He growled, making Valentina startled. What? No, why? Then why is she being treated like one? Have you all or I bought her? His voice echoed throughout the room. No, Thang cut her off. I entrusted my brothers and you all with her, but what did you do to her? She's your sister-in-law, not a maid. I'll talk to you and Nancy in front of my brothers. You may leave. Valentina made her way out, regretting coming here. And yeah, Valentina, next time, don't just barge into our room. Valentina nodded and walked out, closing the door. He turned towards Wine. Don't make a fuss out of it. It's not a big deal. She stood and spoke coldly. She cut him off and stepped closer. If you really cared about me, then you wouldn't have left me in the first place. You wouldn't turn your back on me. You wouldn't neglect my presence in your life. I don't blame your brothers and their wives for the way they treat me. I blame you. If you had respect for me, so they would also have. If you treated me right, then they would also have. She spoke, blinking away her tears. Thang stared at her with pursed lips. She was right. He was responsible for each and everything. Wine walked into the washroom and slammed the door. Few days later, Wine has been neglecting Thang. However, in front of his family, she pretends as if everything is fine between them. Thang noticed her behavior, but this day he is too busy to talk it out with her. Nancy apologized to Wine in front of Thang, but Wine knew she was just making up an act in front of Thang. The Wine brought the glass of water to Thang as he had just returned from somewhere. He was sitting between his brothers in the living room. Thank you, he said, taking the glass from her, not forgetting to hold her hand for a few moments. Wine passed him a secret glare. Should I bring you lunch? She asked with the sweetest smile possible. Thang held back his smile, sipping the water. Did you eat? She shook her head in denial. I'll eat with you, but after a few minutes. Wine nodded and walked to the bedroom to freshen up. After a few minutes, Thang came to the room and found it empty. He smiled, hearing the voice of water running, and took out the file from the cupboard. Walking near the washroom door, where Wine was taking a shower and fuming in anger, thinking of Thang's departure. Suddenly, the door banged, making her flinch. She closed the shower, wondering if it was the washroom door or the bedroom door. She stood still, but it was silence. With a shrug, she opened the shower. This time, it banged louder. Who is it? She yelled furiously. Thang, open the door. Wayne frowned, cursing him inwardly. Are you out of your mind? I'm taking a shower. Sam smiled and banged the door again. So what? Open the door. What the hell is your problem? What do you want? I want to talk. Come on, open it. He was enjoying teasing her. Wayne turned on the shower without responding to him. Sam also dropped the idea of teasing her anymore and sat on the bed, keeping aside the file. After a few moments, Wayne came out glaring at Sam sharply. What was that? What do you want? He leaned on the headboard, smiling widely. Nothing, I was just hungry. Wayne threw the towel on his face and turned to pick up the cloth to tie her hair. I have told the maid to bring. I just want to eat with you. She passed him a glare. It would have been better if you ate with the maid. She shook her head. No, I want to eat with my wife. Wayne ignored him and began drying her hair. Meanwhile, the maid also knocked and entered, placing the tray in front of him. He waited for Wayne, but she was too busy drying and combing her hair in order to kiss him, but it didn't affect him. After realizing he wasn't pissed, instead he waited calmly. Wayne sat and began eating silently, while Theo also began eating. So it's just 2 days left for me and I'll leave for overseas again. Wayne just realized he had 2 days to go and her life will become the same. She gulped the water as she almost choked. I know, so what? She said coldly, giving away the glass. You'll eat and sleep alone once again. He was observing her expressions to see any kind of gloom, but she was normal. There's nothing new in it. I'm used to it. She fixed her gaze on him and said with a smile, let me suggest something. Why don't you get married and have kids there? He shrugged his shoulders, handing her a file. She passed him a questioning gaze. I have a wife already and I like her a lot, he said calmly and gestured for her to open it. The wife whom you left. She opened the file. There were documents of the new house he bought and his business which he established. But I'm back now. She kept the file aside and let out a breath. You're back, but not for me. It's because of Jack's death. You still wouldn't have returned if Jack hadn't had an accident. You didn't just leave me, but at the mercy of your so-called family who is just after your wealth. She said sharply. I didn't know they would treat you this way. Wayne chuckled bitterly, shaking her head. You never tried to know anything. When I tried to tell you about them, you never believed me. Instead, you thought I was turning you against your family. You spent 3 months with me after our wedding, and I think it is enough to know a person and trust him, but you never tried to know me, because you were too busy satisfying your brothers and their wives. There was stunned, seeing her this furious. I know I have neglected my responsibilities, but now I won't leave you here. That is because you pity me for how I have been treated. I don't want your pity. Keep it with you. She stood, held her by the arm, stopping her. Why would I pity you? You are my wife, my only asset, he said softly. Then where were you when I used to wait for your call? When I was treated like a trash? When I used to spend sleepless nights alone? When I was sick and lying unconscious in my room for 3 days straight? When your sister-in-law used to taunt me for being neglected by my husband? For being an orphan who is dependent on her poor foster parents? Now answer me. She grabbed him by the collar and yelled at him, then pulled her closer. The grief in her eyes caused a sharp pain in his chest. I'm sorry for everything, he said in a low tone. In the end, you just had these few words, but your sorry won't fix anything. I wasted my 3 years on your family, but then again, that was not completely their fault. I'm responsible for it as well. I couldn't even stand and fight for myself because I had nowhere to go. I was lonely, helpless, and weak. She tried hard to hold back her tears, but they came out. Each tear that fell seemed to carry a piece of sorrow. Then reached out his hand to wipe her tears, but she jerked it away. Don't touch me because you have no right, she said, wiping her tears and walking away. Time skip. It's been a month since then. There's a complete silence between them. Theo and Wayne moved to their new house, but nothing excited them as they had a war between their heart and mind. Everyone was shocked discovering Theo wasn't going back and he established his business here itself. Theo tried everything possible to make it up for Wayne, but nothing could fix the damage she got. Wayne has been giving him silent treatment. Theo has hired maids for every work. Wine doesn't even cook for him or eat with him, then skips his dinner as he likes to eat with wine. They're like strangers living under the same roof. Now Th arrived home as the maid had called him and told him that wine was running fever. "How are you? Let's go to the hospital," he said as soon as he entered. Wine frowned looking at him. He usually has a lot of work in the office and arrives home by the time she's asleep. "I don't want to go anywhere." He placed his palm on her forehead to check her temperature, but Wine jerked it away. "You can vent out your anger later. Now let's go to the hospital. Your fever is severe. I told you not to eat ice cream. Look at the weather," he said worriedly. Wine leaned on the headboard and rolled her eyes. "It's just a fever. I have taken medicines and I'll be fine." She looked away from him. "But Wine," she interrupted him, "I have been worse than this. You don't have to be so considerate of me. Move away, I want to rest," she said and laid covering her face in the duvet, then stared at her helplessly. He knew he did wrong to her, but now he wanted to make it right, even though if he had to kneel in front of her, he would do that. "Please give me a chance to make it right. I promise I'll make you forget each and every moment of these past 3 years," he said in a low tone, moving closer to her. "I'm sorry, forgive me for neglecting my responsibilities." He leaned towards her and pulled her closer. Wine moved away, but he held her tightly. "Didn't I say don't touch me?" She removed the duvet and glared at him. "I don't want your sorry. Keep it in your pocket." He kissed her chin, taking her off guard, and stood straight. "Fine, I'll grovel and beg until you forgive me, but before that we have to go to the hospital." He scooped her in his arms. "Leave me, what are you doing? I don't want to go anywhere," she screamed, hitting him and wiggling. But Then ignored her and made his way out. "I said leave me." She sank her teeth in his shoulder. Then's expression pained, but he didn't hiss. "Stay still if you don't want me to tie you and do whatever I want to." With one last punch on his chest, she went silent. 3 months later. In these 3 months, Wine's behavior didn't change a bit. She makes sure not to see Thang while he is being mentally unstable. He can't focus on his work. Nothing seems to change. Now he arrived home to their shared bedroom, rubbing his temples. The room was empty, making him frown as Wine is usually asleep by this hour. He shook his head and threw his phone on the bed, thinking she might be in the washroom. He took off his watch, tie, and coat and laid on the bed, closing his eyes. He was lost in deep thought when he felt her soft touch on his forehead. Then swiftly opened his eyes. "Are you not feeling well?" she asked softly and ruffled his messy hair. He seemed to be exhausted. "Just a bit headache, nothing much," he said weakly and sat straight. Wine's behavior surprised him. "Let me give you a massage." He shook his head in denial. "I'll just take the medicine, it will be fine." "Okay, go and change. Dinner is ready, let's eat," she said with a smile. He stared at her and held her hand. "Did you forgive me?" he asked, staring at her hopefully. "This is pure torture and I can't take it anymore," he said helplessly and placed her hand on his heart. "This is not even the half of the 3 years I went through," she said in a low tone. "I am not as strong as you. Your silence is killing me inside. I'm sorry for whatever I have done, knowingly or unknowingly." She placed her hand on his cheek and pressed her forehead against his. "I promise I'll make you the happiest girl. Let's take it slow and build trust and understand each other." Then nodded, pulling her into a hug. He felt as if his weariness had faded, feeling her touch. They stayed silent, feeling each other's touch and heartbeat. 5 years later, Wine walked out of the washroom when the door opened, revealing Thang with a tray. A smile appeared on his face as soon as he saw Wine. "Where is 𝐂𝐿?" she asked about their 2-year-old daughter. He placed the tray on the coffee table and walked to her. "I put her to sleep," he said, pointing at the bed where she was soundly asleep. Wine walked to the bed and kissed her on the forehead. "Come, let's dig in before the food gets cold." He held her by the hand. "I can walk, you know," she spoke, staring at their intertwined hands with a smile. "I know. In fact, I want to pick you in my arms and walk you there, but you freak out every time. I don't want 𝐂𝐿 to wake and ruin our moment." Wine chuckled and sat, while Thang also sat across her. "I can eat by myself," she said as Tham brought the morsel to her mouth. I know, but I want to feed you by myself. He kissed her on the lips before putting the morsel into her mouth. Why are you not eating? She asked as he was just staring at her. I never imagined watching someone eating would be so peaceful. One smile shaking her head. I regret wasting 3 years. Only if I hadn't trusted my brothers and their wives so badly. I'm sorry. I looked at him with a smile. Regret over the past does nothing. The past doesn't exist anymore and I have forgiven you long ago, so don't be sorry. She spoke holding his hand and caressing it. Then pulled her onto his lap and kissed her passionately. While in the meantime, H.'s cries echoed throughout the room, causing